Hello everyone. The purpose of this video is to draw your attention to a change that has happened in our midst, actually in a short span of time. Often changes happen these days without any fanfare. The most significant of all changes are introduced very quietly so that public anxiety is not activated by the introduction of radical changes. Those who know history, and I derive this insight from Immanuel Kant, his writings on universal history. Those who know history tell us that if changes are to be introduced, it is wise to introduce them in a manner that makes people recognize them only in retrospect. Let me make that idea as clear as possible. There are two ways of bringing about changes. Every center of power or every nucleus of power would want to change the society, the state, the world around according to its own tastes and to suit its own priorities and interests. It's a natural thing to do. That's why people crave power in the first place. Now, there are two ways of bringing about changes. One is to notify changes and to elicit public responses, enter into a dialogue with people and persuade them to accept those changes. And it is in this process that rhetoric, the science of rhetoric, plays a part. As we know from ancient civilization, particularly Greek civilization, the rhetoric played an important part in public life. What is rhetoric? Rhetoric is the science and art of persuading others towards accepting your point of view or your agenda or whatever. So, the core of rhetoric is the art of persuading people. So, that becomes important only when changes are introduced in this manner, in the democratic manner, namely, the proposed change is identified, notified, people are given the time and opportunity to study and respond to them, and then naturally there will be resistances or apprehensions, and the agents of change or the people who are sponsoring the change would enter into a dialogue with those segments of the society that are apprehensive about the consequences of these changes, then persuade them towards accepting the need and the logic for bringing about this change. That's a democratic way. But that's not the way changes are being introduced now. If you have noticed, changes are introduced in a very indirect, quiet and subtle manner, or to use a technical term, changes are introduced as fait accompli, which means an accomplished fact. That is to say, people will become aware of these changes only in retrospect, fait accompli. Right? Now, this is in line with or in consonance with the wisdom of historians who tell us that the best way, the least strenuous way to introduce changes is to introduce them in such a manner that people will realize that these changes have actually happened after they have happened and not before they are to happen. So, these are two completely different approaches to bringing about changes. Now, having stated that, now let me come to the specific change. Many changes are happening at this time. We are living through a period of unprecedented changes, both in quantum and in sweep. Now, the particular change that I wish to foreground today, I don't know if you have noticed the shift from merit to loyalty. Till recently, till about 10 years ago, in all our national discourses and judicial pronouncements, merit or the commitment to merit or respect for merit or value attached to merit played a very important part. In fact, played a decisive role. Many of the juridical questions were settled with reference to merit. Merit was then connected to national interest. It was in the interest of the nation to stay unwaveringly committed to merit, and therefore many of the judgments of the Supreme Court were actually decided on this point. But now you will not hear, you do not hear the word merit invoked. That has gone out. In a short span of time, it has gone out. Now, the place of merit is now taken up by loyalty. The foremost merit today is that you are loyal to a particular person, you are loyal to a particular center of power, you are loyal to a particular ideology. It's because this is being realized that certain manifestations happen. For example, recently a small controversy has erupted in the Christian circles. A Christian priest is now getting ready through 41 days of arduous preparation to make his maiden visit to Shabarimala to attain the spiritual bliss of being in the presence of Sri Ayyappa, who is the presiding deity there. Now, that is because this particular change is realized by the individual concerned, and therefore he realizes that he has to demonstrate his loyalty to a particular center of power. The best way he can do it is by religion, by sending out certain religious codes, religious signals, right? Like in nature, the male attracting the female by sending out certain noises, or in some cases certain smell, odor. Now, in this case, the individuals of this bracket will send out certain religious codes. You see, I am also like this, I am also like that. I have full appreciation, great appreciation for whatever you value, therefore you and I are one. So Advaita philosophy will be now invoked not by Hindus but by non-Hindus. You mark my words, and of course the word Advaita philosophy, the label may not be used, but Advaita philosophy will now be in practice in India, not by Hindus but by non-Hindus for pragmatic reasons, and it will be very interesting for you to watch how this plays out on the ground. I am only giving you an advance notice so that you can remain alert to this. So now, merit no longer matters, or the only merit is that you are loyal to a particular person, and that's the reason why I am not saying this as a matter of denouncing anybody. I am only making an observation as a neutral observer of what's happening in the country, which is my duty as an educated person and a lifetime teacher to do. A teacher never retires. He may retire from paid employment, but a teacher never retires from his vocation to teach. So I continue and I remain loyal to my vocation to be a teacher. Now, this particular change, this particular shift from merit to loyalty, or this rehashing of merit as loyalty to a particular person, evident foremost in the political process of seeking to win elections only by invoking a particular name. Prime Minister Modi goes around addressing people all over the country, the 140 crore people, saying, vote for me, vote for me. You are not voting for the local person, the local candidate, you are voting for me. So this is the idea of loyalty working out electorally, right? And if you look at the national discourse now, whatever the Prime Minister says is parroted by everybody else. For example, Asiad is coming, and you watch the advertisement for the last 4 months. An advertisement blitzkrieg has been going on, and the heart of the advertisement is par, sau par. That is, this time India participating in the Asiad will win more than 100 medals. Now, this idea of course originates from Modi, and I have to give due credit to him. He is an inexhaustible fountain spring of catchy slogans. I don't think anyone can match him. And I salute him for that. And immediately is picked up and everywhere. For example, Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, Sabka Vishwas, Sabka Prayas. And that is then parroted throughout the country. I remember 9 years ago, the Modi kurta became very popular. Everybody started sporting the Modi kurta. But of course, nobody can match his sartorial elegance because it's very expensive. You can't maintain a wardrobe of the size and scope that Narendra Modi maintains, and therefore you can't compete with him in terms of diversity, variety and dazzle of his wardrobe. Therefore, nobody tries to compete with him. It's impossible to do so. But therefore, the point therefore is, now the whole of the national culture, the foundation has shifted from merit to loyalty, or loyalty as the only merit that matters. And those who are not therefore meritorious in the loyalty sense of the term stand to be heavy losers. That reality is already an accomplished fact. And therefore, it takes particular discernment in our times to read the writings on the wall. It's a biblical metaphor, the writings on the wall. The idea of reading the writings on the wall is becoming alert and aware of the changes that are in the offing. See, most people become aware of changes after they have happened. Reading the writing on the wall means becoming prescient, Prescient. It's a beautiful word. Becoming prescient about what's going to happen in the near future, as a sort of spiritual intuition which pierces through the facades of deflection and camouflage and enables you to see through the maze of deceptive appearance and read the truth. Or to borrow a few words from Shakespeare, to look into the seed of time and read which seed will sprout and which will not. Looking into the seed of time. The seed will sprout, not today but tomorrow, day after, but as and when it does, which will sprout and which will just disappear. Now that kind of prescience, that kind of spiritual intuition is extremely important today. So I thought I would just flag this much. There's a great deal to be said about it. A fundamental, radical shift has happened. It has happened, and we realize it only in retrospect. Nobody said that this is going to be brought about. Nobody asked you whether this change is good, bad, desirable or undesirable. It has just happened. We simply accept it. Like demonetization, no consultation was ever made about the merit or demerit of it. It was slapped on the nation as a fait accompli. The changes in Kashmir, the vivisection of Kashmir and its the destruction of its statehood, it was an accomplished fact. It was not subject to democratic discussions, consultations, art of persuasion, nothing of the sort. Just one sledgehammer blow and it is done. And everything, as you know, is now done in this manner, and therefore the art of persuasion has gone out of fashion completely. Therefore, merit is devalued. Now, the point I am making, and I am going to close on this. Now, for the time being, it may seem that this is okay. Pragmatically, this is a good thing. After all, in a democracy, it's very difficult to make progress. Convincing people is not an easy thing. Therefore, the only way things will work is that you have a big dictator who rams things through. But people don't realize the long-term consequences of this, which are actually serious and worrisome. For example, once you shift the intellectual, cultural foundation of a people from merit in the intellectual sense of the term to merit in the loyalty sense of the term, what you're doing is you're actually destroying the very foundation of the intellectual effervescence, the intellectual growth of a people. And do I have to tell you that if a people become intellectually stunted, paralyzed, the consequences are horrible. For the time being, for those who are in power, the powers that be, the ruling dispensation, this seems a very attractive proposition. Because after all, once merit shifts to loyalty, what happens is you don't have to face any resistance. Nobody will ever ask you a question. Everybody will only say my bap. and your writ runs, whether it is good, bad, or indifferent, it runs, and the whole nation stands and applauds. For example, the Prime Minister says that in order to drive away the coronavirus, all that you have to do is to stand and bang your utensils, and the whole country does it. Whether or not we are rid of the corona epidemic is a different matter, but we do it. That's the idea of loyalty. Thinking must stop. Rational interrogation of a proposition becomes anti-national. Rationality becomes anti-national. Seeking for evidence, as Sam Pitroda realized too painfully in his life, when the Balakot attack happened, he said, as a scientist, it's my discipline to ask for evidence. That's why I'm a scientist. So I'm not disputing that you undertook the attack, but please share some evidence with us. And he was vilified and attacked and caricatured as an anti-national element. Sam Pitroda did so because he did not realize what I'm revealing to you, what I'm discussing with you. He did not realize that the foundation has already shifted. And therefore, the question realizes, and I'm not going to give you an answer to the question, I will merely pose the question and stop. The question remains, what are we to do? And in this context, I'm merely echoing a question that my most favorite author, Count Leo Tolstoy, raised. And he has a book of that title, What Shall We Do? I repeat, what shall we do? Thank you.